Over the years, Atlantic Records, a huge record label and imprint of WMG, has developed a bad reputation for themselves. From Meek Mill accusing Atlantic Records of taking advantage of their artists, to Gucci Mane saying that Atlantic Records was racist, there have been many incidents where their own artists have called out Atlantic. I mean, they even had that huge botting controversy recently where they were accused of botting their own artists' songs and videos to make it as if they were bigger than they actually are. And this could definitely prove problematic, as they currently have 153 artists signed, including some big names like Bruno Mars, Charlie Puth, Ed Sheeran, Jack Harlow, Lizzo, and many more. And if Atlantic really does what they've been accused of with their artists, this could mean that some of your favorite artists are in hot water right now. So let's look into it. Also, super quick, I want to say a lot of this stuff that Atlantic is accused of is pretty common in the music industry, but it's definitely alarming how often Atlantic in particular gets accused of crazy stuff. And on top of that, I like to point out the word I'm using, accused. These are all alleged accusations, whatever I gotta say, because I'm not trying to get sued. I'm just compiling all of the accusations and putting them into a video. So let's talk about it. It seems like over the past 5-ish years, the majority of serious allegations have come out against Atlantic Records. From the huge botting controversy to blackballing and racism accusations, there was a lot of crazy stuff. But the controversy started long before just recently. Atlantic Records began in 1944 and was founded by two Turkish brothers. I know history sounds boring, but I'll keep this brief. When they first started, they specialized in jazz, R&B, and soul, with artists like Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, and many more. A couple of decades later, they became a subsidiary of Warner Music Group, one of the 3 major labels in the music industry, alongside Sony Music Entertainment and Universal Music Group. This is important to know because these 3 labels own pretty much every other small label, except for a handful of indie labels, so it's kind of like a big business music industry monopoly type of thing. Because of this, a lot of shady stuff goes down in the music industry, since it is a business and its main goal is to make money, which I've talked about extensively on my channel if you are unaware. But many of these shady business accusations have been made against Atlantic in particular, and that's pretty much all the history you gotta know. I told you I'd keep it brief. There weren't too many controversies that I can find before the 2000s. However, after is when one of the first major accusations was made against Atlantic. In 2005, an artist named Lupe Fiasco, who's great by the way if you don't know him, signed to Atlantic Records. Things seem to be going well as he released his first 2 albums, Food and Liquor and The Cool, which both did very well. Then in 2008, fans caught wind of some controversy. Lupe announced his retirement, saying he was going to release a triple disc album called Loop End. This triple disc album would have fulfilled his contract with Atlantic Records since he had 3 more albums with them remaining, but they were not having it. Apparently, Atlantic was trying to coerce Lupe into signing a 360 deal, threatening to not promote his music if he didn't agree. If you're unaware, a 360 deal is when a record label promises financial support in areas such as marketing, promotion, tours, merchandise, advances, and things along those lines. But in return, the artist is required to give them a percentage of all of those things and possibly more. So to put it simply, a 360 deal can often be in favor of the label, as they get large percentages of pretty much everything the artist monetizes. That sounds fair and definitely could be fair, but definitely is not always the case. As stated by Wikipedia, the 360 deal, which began to show up in the early 2000s, reflects an attempt by the industry to tap into what traditionally had been the artist's exclusive domain of money-making opportunities, such as shows, sponsorship deals, or merchandising. So basically, 360 deals means that the label gets a bigger piece of the pie. And it makes sense as to why Lupe didn't want to sign this. However, Lupe didn't end up going the triple disc route and was stuck with Atlantic. He was trying to release his next album, which would later be titled Lasers, and it seemed as if Atlantic was preventing him from doing that. But his fans really had his back. I mean, 30,000 fans signed an online petition for the album's release, and hundreds of fans protested outside of the Atlantic Records office. Lupe even gave a speech there.
Second thing I want to say is thank you very much for putting on a very peaceful protest. Third thing I want to say is Lasers is dropping March 8th.
It seemed as if Atlantic had listened, and Lasers was released on March 7th of 2011, which debuted at number 1. Lupe has since elaborated on his situation with Atlantic when a fan suggested Atlantic was pushing pop records and that Lupe didn't want to conform. Lupe said, "Not accurate. I was comfortable making pop records. The issue was who controlled those records and what the ownership and splits were. Atlantic would only promote my records if they owned a large portion of them or if I signed a 360 deal. I gave Bruno Mars Just the Way You Are." He continued in another another tweet saying, "The issue was never my ability to make hit or pop records. The issue wasn't even the business per se. My contracts were solid. It's when the label didn't want to abide by the contracts anymore and started throwing shitty little curveballs out of FOMO and greed. All bad after that." Also, I just learned what FOMO means like a couple months ago. It means fear of missing out, in case you guys weren't aware. Lupe then responded to a fan who said, "The industry did you dirty," by quoting some executives. He said, "I cannot guarantee we will promote your records if you are not a 360 artist on the label." Lyre Cohen, president of Warner Music, 2008. Then he said, "We don't think Battle Scars is a good look for you, so we're not going to sign off on the release." Mike Kaiser, head of Urban Atlantic Records, 2012. And this quote perfectly brings us to 2012, where Lupe was able to put out his fourth album, Food and Liquor 2. But he still struggled with the label, with the previously mentioned Mike Kaiser scoffing at the rapper's attempt to acquire his masters, like Lupe had said. Lupe continued having issues with Atlantic. So yeah, so far it seems like Atlantic Records really stinks.
But you know what doesn't stink? Me. I try to make sure that I'm always smelling A1, because smelling good can take your look and your vibe to a whole nother level. I don't know about you guys, but I just feel way more confident after, you put on a nice fit, and to top it off, you throw on a little cologne. Recently, I got a few fragrances from Scentbird like Drift Open Road, Sanctuary Moonbear, and Room 1015 Wave Child and Atelier Materie Cedar Vigalia. And those last two are my personal favorite. They smell so good. Also, I don't even know what the name is and what the brand is. That's one thing with fragrances I can never figure out. But those last two are fire, trust me. Especially Wave Child. It's a bunch of fruits and other natural scents that make me feel like I'm in some sort of apple orchard or something. And I got all these amazing scents from my friends over at Scentbird. Scentbird is a subscription service where you can pick out a few different fragrances that they ship to you each month, and you get these neat little vials so you can try a bunch of smells for the low. As you can see, the vials are super clean. They have these cool looking colors, and it just looks and smells like quality. Also, they got these little locks, as you can see on screen, so if you're traveling, you can just pop it in your travel bag and you'll be good to go. It won't explode and leak everywhere. And it's nice because you don't have to drop a few hundred committing to an entire bottle. This way you can switch up your smell every single month, because you always got to keep them guessing. So if you're interested in trying Scentbird, use my code MattyBalls2 to get 55% off of your first month. You get the product, which is normally $16, for just $8, which is a steal if you ask me. And it'll make sure that you are always smelling fresh. Like I said, that's a pretty good deal, so make sure to use code MattyBalls2 or check out the links in the description. And without further ado, let's get back to the video.
Fans weren't provided with a release date for a while for this album either, which resulted in the hacker group Anonymous threatening Atlantic, which is insane. They tweeted, "At Atlantic Records, you have 24 hours to present a statement announcing the immediate release of Lupe Fiasco's album." Then they said, "If you do not comply, we will launch a direct attack against your website, your associates, and your executives." Then 19 hours after these tweets, Atlantic announced the release date. Now, I'm not sure if this was the reason they announced the release date, but they did.
There was a protest to get my third album out. A petition
I remember.
to get that album out.
Right? I remember.
The last and final album, the fifth album, it took a hacker group, which was at the time fighting the Ku Klux Klan and the North Korean government.
And despite all of these issues Lupe had with Atlantic, he revealed even more things they did in 2020. On an Instagram Live with Joe Budden, Lupe revealed some very shady stuff Atlantic did regarding his first single, Kick Push, from his debut album.
Who put Kick Push on the radio?
You did.
We did. First and 15 Productions. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Who called WGCI, which was giving Kick Push about 200 spins a week, and told them to stop playing the record?
I don't know.
Craig Calvin.
He went on to say that he was friends with the dude at the radio station, and the guy told him that Craig, the executive, personally called and asked him to stop playing the song.
You know why he really did it?
Oh, no.
Because he didn't have nothing to do with Kick Push.
Oh, okay, well, that exists in the corporate world too, though.
From an equity position. He didn't have any publishing. He didn't have any royalty rights. He didn't bring the producer. He didn't have anything to write it. He had nothing to do with it. You know what they did?
What?
They flew down to the Philippines to find the woman who we sampled the record from and bought the entire record from her. So they actually own the song that Kick Push is sampled from. That's what they did.
Lupe continued to say that he could say the same thing about his other songs like Superstar, Battle Scars, and more, which is crazy and definitely some very shady behavior. But Lupe and Joe did joke about how it's low-key smart.
Isn't that smart?
It's genius. Joe,
Yo,
it's
that is some,
listen.
that is some genius shit.
On some gangster shit, they don't, Atlantic doesn't double dip, they triple dip. It's fucking genius.
That's hard, Lupe.
It's cold blooded.
Yeah, that's hard.
Don't get me
Listen,
wrong. Trust me, Joe, I'm from the streets. I'm a street for real. This shit's genius.
Also, I think it's important to point out how Lupe said he only had issues with 3 executives for a variety of different reasons.
Only beef at Atlantic Records and has always only been with 3 people. Craig Counter, Mike Karen, and Mike Kaiser. Right? The rest of the building, beautiful. Julie Greenwald is an amazing executive and a wonderful record executive. And in some cases, a wonderful person at that. Like, very supportive. Marsha is amazing. The whole staff.
He even went on to say that they gave him his 360 deal while he was recovering from a nearly fatal pneumonia sickness. So clearly Lupe's time at Atlantic was rough. But he was just the first of many artists to accuse Atlantic Records of some crazy things. In 2015, Waka Flocka said on Twitter, "I f***ing hate my label. Atlantic Records let me buy out." In 2017, Action Bronson, who was signed to Atlantic, said on Twitter, "Put my mother album out. Stay independent. For fuck's sake, please listen to me." So in just 2 years, other artists said Atlantic was preventing their albums from being released, and Action Bronson went independent the following year. That same year in 2017, someone in the industry tweeted out a text message that said, "Hey dude, who are some of the new Atlanta producers making fire at the moment? We have an Atlantic A&R meeting there in November. I'm trying to make a list of producers that we should have swing by and play some tracks/ideas for." Metro Boomin, who's an extremely successful and well-established producer, responded to this tweet saying, "PSA to producers everywhere, don't let Atlantic Records steal your soul." Metro followed up with a series of tweets saying, "What I said about Atlantic Records was directed at Mike Karen and the APG division, who deals directly with producers and songwriters." In some other deleted tweets, Metro said, "These guys got a whole textbook on how to put a hit together like it's a math problem. I to this day find it hard to believe. They basically just want to slave you and steal your music to make hits." Mike Will Made It also backed him up. In 2018, the producer Edan said that Atlantic Records called albums mixtapes so they didn't have to pay him as much as he was the producer.
Did Atlantic actually release that project through the Atlantic machine?
Yeah, but I don't know if they called it a mixtape exactly, but they didn't treat it like it was an album, which was just their way of not paying me a whole lot.
You answered my question. That's the burning question.
That's happened with Wiz albums too. You know, the Khalifa album, I don't know if they called it a street album. They came up with some really clever name that essentially meant everyone involved, you're going to get paid, half what you normally do. It's a thing. I mean, it's I've seen it happen really more often in the last few years. Anything to save a buck for these labels.
And like they suggested, this seems to be a common theme among other labels as well, but the fact that there's been so many direct mentions of Atlantic Records doing all this crazy stuff makes them seem not so great. Somehow though, the accusations against them continued to get worse over the years. In 2020, the hashtag Atlantic Records is over party was trending on Twitter because of a few weird controversies. The first of which was this big conspiracy theory that Atlantic Records was trying to sign female rappers to take Nicki Minaj's spot as the top female rapper. Azalea Banks spoke on this in an interview.
Nicki Minaj for a very long time has had complete market share of the female rap, and for a very long time these other music industry execs have been trying to push their female rap products through. Nicki Minaj was just not letting these other corporate white guys get a piece of her pie. So they made Cardi B and launched her. It's not a theory, it's the truth.
On the Joe Budden podcast, he interviewed Mike Kaiser to talk about Cardi B and her deal, because people also felt as if she was being mismanaged. Kaiser said, "Cardi is a superstar and we're gonna treat her as such, okay? Period. She will be well taken care of. That's my word." But if you didn't know, Nicki Minaj and Cardi B had beef. So people think Atlantic Records brought Cardi B on board so she could directly compete with Nicki. Another female rapper named Lady LaSure said she turned down an Atlantic deal because they wanted her to diss Nicki. She said, "The first offer, massive, incredible amounts of money. I've never seen money like that. £250,000. She continued, "Offered a record label deal with Atlantic, who just kept trying to persuade me to do a diss track to Nicki Minaj. I didn't know Nicki Minaj then, personally. We never spoke or anything like that. I knew of her come up, I've seen her journey, and I just thought she was amazing." So yeah, this was a pretty big theory and it seemed like there was some truth to it. During this trending hashtag, fans also brought up things like Atlantic hurting Oliver Tree's career, members of Why Don't We saying they weren't able to release music either, and many more accusations came out. out. On top of this, around this time, Gucci Mane said that Atlantic Records was racist. He tweeted, "Leaving Atlantic Records July 3rd, these crackers polite racist." The following year in 2021, even more accusations came out against Atlantic Records from artists like P&B Rock.
The latest and greatest example of the fact that record labels just ain't for you. Now, he's actually on Instagram complaining, and he put up on his Instagram story saying, "Atlantic Records, I want to buy out of this BS deal y'all got me in. Y'all making millions off of me for years, and I ain't even get 1 mil yet." Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just here to tell you that Atlantic Records ain't robbing P&B Rock, okay? P&B Rock probably just only found out the game. This is what all record labels are.
He later explained himself in an interview with DJ Academics.
So, explain to me, because I know you're independent now, right? All the way.
Yeah.
Why are you independent?
Pretty much because I wasn't making money like off of my music like that. You know what I'm saying? Like with the deal that I had, it was just like a beginner's deal, you know what I'm saying? And when we was trying to renegotiate for that shit, it was like, I was on my last 2 albums. It was like we was at a stalemate. We just really came to the agreement, like, man, we don't
You just
want
want like a bigger advance? Because I'm pretty sure.
It wasn't no, like me personally, like I didn't know even about, I was getting a little money. I ain't gonna say they wasn't giving me no money, but it wasn't like the money that I was generating, you know what I'm saying?
Shortly after that, NBA YoungBoy said, "I was going #1 2 weeks straight with a mixtape, so they took it down off the charts. I don't give a f, you still can't stop me. Don't sign to Atlantic if you are an artist. They're not going to support you, especially if you live a certain way." So it seems like they did a similar thing to YoungBoy as they did to Lupe, where they wanted more money from their artists, so they did some shady things behind the scenes to guarantee that the artists knew they had to go through their label to release music. And I know it seems like I just breezed through a bunch of these, and I kind of did, but it goes to show how many artists were over the years constantly accusing Atlantic Records of being up to some type of bullshit. But don't worry, the accusations still aren't over. Most recently, Meek Mill has accused Atlantic Records of some of the same things other artists like Lupe accused them of as well. In a series of tweets in February of 2022, Meek Mill said, "So look, I made Atlantic Records hundreds of millions and let them me out." I honestly am not sure what he meant by that. He continued though, "They still saying I can't drop music until 9 months after my last album got blackballed." He then said, "Roddy my youngin' still, but that label separated us instantly when the millions came in from him. Same thing they tried to do with me and Rose. It takes a long time to catch up too, because most of them tied in for the love of some money. Artists scared to speak up." So basically what I believe was going on was Roddy Ricch was popping, so they kind of put Meek Mill on the back burner. And this happens at a lot of labels where if you have another artist popping, you're going to focus more of your attention and resources on them, so other artists may have their albums shelved. Meek also said he had to fight for his life to get his 2016 album Dream Chasers 4 counted as an album, since apparently he once referred to it as a mixtape, which if you remember is the exact same thing that happened to Edan when Atlantic Records called his album a mixtape so they didn't have to pay him as much. Meek said, "If y'all made 20 million off it, what is it counted as?" He finished up his Twitter rant saying, "If I didn't have millions, I'd probably do something crazy. They're outsmarting young black kids, taking advantage and calling it business. Other artists speak up and tell the truth while you winning, not when you're down." So I hope you guys are noticing a theme. So far, Atlantic Records has repeatedly been accused of 1, trying to pay artists less by calling an album a mixtape, 2, trying to get artists to obey them and threatening them by not releasing their music if they don't, 3, pitting their artists against other artists like we saw with all of the female rappers who claim Atlantic wanted artists to diss Nicki Minaj, and 4, they just straight up have done a bunch of other shady stuff we have seen in this video. I didn't even touch on the 2 SA lawsuits filed against multiple executives and the threats they made against Kanye unless they got a percentage of his 2 latest albums. So all of this had been going on for years, and you're probably wondering, how could Atlantic Records get any worse? Well, they got exposed for botting their artists' plays. On November 26 of 2022, No Jumper reported, Atlantic Records is under fire for allegedly botting all their artists' new videos, including Lil Uzi Vert, Roddy Ricch, A Boogie, and Don Toliver. There were some screenshots accompanied with the tweet that showed a bunch of fake comments on all of the music videos. Our guy Academics chimed in saying, "Damn, Atlantic Records went from being hella lit a few years ago to being sh**. They literally threw in the towel on marketing and promoting their artists. They just buying wild amounts of fake views, which making their artists look even worse." Following this, I actually made my own video on it covering how this is actually a normal thing in the music industry, so I'll make sure to link that below if you're interested in learning more about this. But many people were just finding out about it, so it shocked many fans. This went so viral that Atlantic Records finally responded, denying any involvement. First, Don Toliver's team responded by saying, "Just like the other artists and their teams who have been attacked with botting reports, we are deeply upset and concerned. To be absolutely clear, neither Don or anyone on his team has has had any involvement here. They also said, while we conduct our own investigation of these allegations, we urge Atlantic Records to do the same, to protect the integrity of not only their roster of artists, but their reporting metrics. We look forward to sharing more as we obtain more information. I think it goes without saying that they didn't share any more information. Atlantic did follow up shortly after, saying, Atlantic Records has never used bots for any of our artists.
Atlantic Records denies cooking the books, telling TMZ Atlantic Records has never used bots for any of our artists. Atlantic, I know y'all already reached out. And, you know what I mean? I might just let y'all lie continue. But you know I could provide 100,000% proof that y'all paid out invoices to people who were faking streams.
And just like that, and like everything else in the news cycle, people kind of moved on and forgot about it. But I actually got the industry insider scoop on this whole situation. And obviously I don't want to expose who I got this info from because that would be pretty bad, so I'm going to be very vague here. But after making my video on botting in the music industry, someone confirmed to me that Atlantic Records was botting one of their smaller artist music videos without their permission, to which the artist obviously objected, allegedly. So these accusations were obviously very damaging to Atlantic's reputation. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these practices are not exclusive to Atlantic Records. Just because Atlantic has been called out more often than other labels, sure, they may be a bit worse historically, but many labels do these things. So as fans, I think it's important that we focus on supporting more independent labels. And if any of you guys out there are aspiring artists, consider signing to an indie label if you're provided the chance. If you want to learn more about bots in the music industry, the shady ways in which labels use them, and how insanely common they are, consider clicking the video on the screen. Other than that, thank you guys for watching. If you liked, please leave a like. Other than that, this has been your boy Matty Balls, and I appreciate you guys for watching and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you again to Scentbird for sponsoring this video. Wonderful product right here. Make sure to use my code MattyBalls2 to get 55% off of your first month, so you guys can be just got in my mouth. Always smelling fresh. That time it got in my eye. Make sure you use my code.